She was always trying to rebel.
Antoine Wright was her troublesome boyfriend.
We had just been released from prison. I thought that he was a bad boy.
And Isabel Pedroza was Linda's disapproving mother.
Isabel was not happy with the situation.
Isabella was frightened for her daughter.
But then Isabel disappeared.
Isabella Pedroza had been reported missing by her daughter, Linda Pedroza.
And the ensuing investigation would leave detectives wondering, had Isabel been right about Antoine?
She thought it was a bad influence. She didn't like him.
Or was the danger already lurking within Isabel, Florida, July 4th, 2000? It was around 11 a.m. when a surveyor parked his truck alongside a tangled patch of swamp known as the acreage.
The acreage was at that time and still remains today a very rural area.
Totally unpopulated, no homes, just Florida scrub.
It wouldn't stay that way for long.
Homes were going to be built there. There was a lot of construction planned for that area.
But instead of survey stakes, a different sort of marker would soon appear along the roadside. Crime scene tape.
We received a call that a surveyor discovered what they believe is human remains.
The body was about 50 yards off the roadway, well hidden by the thick scrub.
If it wasn't a road crew or if it wasn't that surveyor, there's just no way you'd find that body.
Clothes and hair tentatively identified the body as female. Beyond that was tough to say.
It was partial skeletal remains, and she was in an advanced stage of decomposition.
Although given the extreme heat, that didn't mean the body had been there long.
You're talking temperature-wise, very hot, very humid. You can go from a human being to a skeletonized body very rapidly.
No matter how long she'd been there, a positive identification would likely require DNA or dental records.
We really didn't have a lot to go on as far as any other identifiers like a purse or any type of ID.
However, there were some clues that could help trace the woman's identity.
She had some really distinct jewelry on both her neck. She had a necklace and I believe some type of bracelet.
There were also signs that she hadn't wandered out into the swamp on her own.
Based on the wire wrapped around the neck, it was obvious that we had foul play here.
That evening, Palm Beach County Sheriff's investigators sent the jewelry to their crime lab.
We photographed everything, crime scene photograph, took it back to the lab, did individual photographs so I can utilize the jewelry as a potential identifier.
Then, to narrow down their search for the mystery woman's identity, the investigators combed through the missing persons reports. One of their most promising leads was the file of a 50-year-old woman from Palm Beach Gardens named Isabel Pedroza.
Isabella Pedroza had been reported missing by her daughter, Linda Pedroza.
Born in 1983.
The Spanish soap operas. And she really got me into those when I was growing up.
The TV wasn't the only source of drama in the household, however. As long as Linda could remember, her mother and father had a troubled marriage.
Life wasn't that great, okay? Because, we had problems in the marriage, conflicts. Linda grew up in that atmosphere.
The conflict centered on Miguel Pedroza's drinking problem.
I've been an alcoholic since I was 20.
I remember going to the home, for instance, and in the night, and he was drinking in the car and sleeping in the car outside outside the home.
It affected the marriage between my parents. It affected our relationship. It affected my life. When he wasn't home, I was pretty much the focus, the person she focused on to take out, her frustration.
While her husband struggled with alcohol, Isabel did her best to raise their daughter.
She appeared to be the person that was like the glue in the family, always trying to hold the family together.
She was very possessive, especially with Linda, because they're the only daughter, and she tried to protect her from the father in the drinking problem.
Protective or not, Isabel's strict rule was hard on Linda.
Linda was never allowed to have a normal childhood as having a friend to come over and spend the night or her go to someone's house and spend the night. So Linda at times felt left out.
I wasn't allowed to join any extracurricular activities, no cheerleading, no Girl Scouts, no nothing. Unfortunately, I was never given that, and I didn't have no siblings, so really I felt alone.
Even as a child, Linda rebelled.
Sometimes Linda would actually have to sneak over to my house just so she could play a little bit with the neighborhood children.
I was having problems in school. I just started, after 4th and 5th grade, I just started really, my grades started going down. I think I started really messing up in school because I wanted, to make up for that fun that all the other kids were having.
As Linda got older, her behavior became an issue as well.
Linda started having a few problems, like almost getting in fights or confrontations with girls at school.
I got in a fight in 9th grade and I was suspended.
Linda was eventually expelled and ended up in a small, privately run alternative school.
It was mainly students that couldn't go to any other public school in the Palm Beach County.
Linda's grades failed to improve, and if anything, the discipline problems increased.
Those kids were wild, so I joined the crowd, getting into doing drugs and stuff, calling people over, and I was smoking weed. I wasn't thinking about school.
Linda's behavior did little to improve her relationship with Isabel.
Linda lived in a state of apprehension, fear. And sometimes I would worry when I would leave the house because I knew she was going to scold Linda,
Occasionally, Miguel would try and step in, to little avail.
I just tell my wife, hey, there are better ways of talking to a child. Then she would start up with me.
By the time Linda was 16, the family was falling apart.
We were always fighting, and it affected Linda quite a bit. It was very sad, Linda never really enjoyed her youth.
I couldn't wait to turn 18 so I could just get away.
But as it turned out, Linda would be on her own sooner than she expected. By early 2000, Miguel Pedroza's drinking problem cost him his job.
Alcoholism really, really took a toll on him and just pretty much gradually ruined his life.
Miguel's unemployment made the whole family's life more difficult since Isabel didn't work full-time.
Because of the different little jobs she did, it wasn't always guaranteed that she'd bring home money.
So just before her 17th birthday, Linda dropped out of school and went to work.
She was working all the time. So, I figured she had to be something going on at home where she had to pay bills or something.
I worked at Chick-fil-A during the day, and then at nighttime, I got a job as a hostess at Applebee's. So I was working a lot.
Linda's hard work didn't just help provide for the family. It also drew mother and daughter closer.
She was proud of me. I'd give her my little tips. I'd keep a few dollars, but I usually just gave her everything.
But the truce between Linda and her mother wouldn't last. That spring, while working at the mall, 17-year-old Linda met a 23-year-old named Antoine Wright.
He was very savvy and had a street smart about him, and very polite with a big smile.
Antoine had reason to smile. He had been released from prison just a few months earlier.
Antoine had had a past history of shooting someone, that he had already been in jail.
The aggravated battery with a deadly weapon charge only made Antoine more attractive to Linda.
I thought he was so cool. He had just been released from prison. I thought that he was a bad boy, and I immediately was mesmerized by him because he doesn't take crap from nobody, and he was the complete opposite of everything my mom wanted for me.
Linda always wanted to be with the bad boys. She was always trying to rebel.
Within days, they were dating.
We just hang out a lot. We'd go to the mall. That was the best thing to do then, was go to the mall and hang out.
And after 3 months of hanging out, Linda decided it was time she introduced her new boyfriend to her mother.
I was like, I think I love him and whatever, and I've never talked to my mom about a boy before. I said, there's somebody I want you to meet.
The meeting didn't go well.
Isabel was not happy with the situation of Linda dating Antoine.
She was upset because he was older and he had a felony conviction.
Isabella didn't want him around. She thought he was a bad influence. She didn't like him.
It wasn't long before Isabel's worst fears were all but confirmed.
He snuck over and we were in the bedroom, and my mom came home by surprise and caught him in there.
That's when she told Linda this relationship's over.
My mom started forbidding him to come over. She forbidden him to see me.
And when Isabel caught Antoine at the house again on June 8th, she called the police. No charges were filed this time, but Isabel did warn Antoine to stay away from Linda or face the consequences.
She said she was going to call the police on him and, press rape charges on him, and because he was older than me.
Faced with the threat of going back to jail, Antoine agreed to stop seeing Linda, and the tension between Linda and her mother cooled. But what Isabel didn't know was that her daughter was still dating Antoine in secret.
I would call my mom at work and I would tell her, oh, I'm going to go walk the dog, and I'd be gone for an hour. I'd take the bus to where he lived.
Been at odds over Antoine. Miguel's drinking had continued unabated.
I just stopped caring, I would go out, and just get drunk.
And the more Miguel drank, the more he and Isabel argued.
Sometimes I would get really angry, and then we'd start fighting in the house.
Their last fight on the evening of May 29, 2000, turned physical.
He wanted to drink. He had no money. He wanted to drink, so he started hitting her.
Isabel called the police, and Miguel ended up serving the next few months in jail.
He was on probation for DUI or something like that, and unfortunately that violated his probation.
Linda's father was gone, and with all of Isabel's focus now on her daughter, the friction between Linda and her mother only intensified.
Things just started getting really bad between my mom and I then, because she was just on me about everything.
But Linda's relationship with her mother was about to get much worse. Coming up, Isabel vanishes.
She packed up all her stuff and just left.
And Antoine suddenly reappears.
The door opened up and a black male came out.
On June 27, 2000, Linda Pedroza called the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and reported that her mother, Isabel, was missing.
She reported that her mother had not returned any phone calls and that she had not heard from her for several days.
Linda told the authorities she'd last seen her daughter. But this argument had been different. According to Linda, it ended when her mother stormed out of the house.
The last time she saw her mother said that she was going to be leaving, going to Texas to visit her brother.
She packed up all her stuff and just left. And I haven't heard from her since.
And after several days with no word from her mother and no news from her brother in Texas, Linda said she had started to worry.
She hasn't called him, that we don't know where she was at.
Linda called police 3 days after her disappearance.
Isabel Pedroza was officially a missing person, but she wouldn't stay that way for long. On July 4th, 7 days after Linda reported her mother missing, a surveyor had stumbled across human remains in a remote patch of swamp locals called the Acreage.
It did not look like the body was there for much of a long time period because there wasn't enough growth over the remains.
The condition of the remains made an immediate identification appear unlikely.
It was July, it was hot, and there were some wild animals back there.
There was no ID on the body and nothing to point to her killer.
This is a real whodunit. We had some clothing. We also had some jewelry left around the chest cavity, but we really didn't have a lot to go on.
The investigators photographed the dead woman's distinctive jewelry and searched local law enforcement files, hoping to find a lead on her identity.
We found several cases of people missing. You're looking at a very wide spectrum of possibilities, so we took it all into account.
But one recent report was a possible match. It was a 50-year-old woman named Isabel Pedroza, and the officer who took the report from her daughter thought something seemed suspicious. So sheriff's investigators contacted one of Isabel's co-workers and showed her photographs of the jewelry.
We got lucky with the jewelry. We were able to identify that jewelry.
Isabel Pedroza had jewelry like that, in fact, had it made for her special.
But how had Isabel ended up dead in a Florida swamp? Detectives suspected foul play and planned their next move carefully. On the afternoon of July 5th, 11 days after Isabel had disappeared, Detective Robert Wolfert drove out to the Pedroza house in Palm Beach Gardens to speak with Linda.
She was very calm. She had a very pleasant demeanor about her. And I asked her if I could come in. After identifying myself, she offered me in.
The detective didn't tell Linda about finding her mother because he was trying to determine if she knew more about Isabel's disappearance than she had initially reported.
I went along with the idea that she was missing. I did not tell her that I have jewelry that was identified by an individual that believes it's her mother. I didn't tell her anything about any of the remains, but I just comfort her with the idea that her mother's missing and we're going to do the best we can to find her.
Sitting in the living room, Linda gave the detective a formal statement about her mother's disappearance.
We were arguing about me starting college in January, and then she brought up the subject of my dad and him being in jail, and she couldn't stand it anymore.
In the case reports that we had on that particular resident showed a dysfunctional household to a certain degree.
According to Linda, her mother was so fed up with the situation that she'd abruptly loaded up the car and left.
She put her in her car and she left around 6 o'clock. I know it was 6 o'clock.
Surprisingly upfront about the strained relationship with her mother, Linda said she'd initially been happy to see her mother leave.
She indicated that she doesn't have a good relationship with her mother, but it wasn't bad. In her opinion, it was just a relationship where her mother doesn't like her friends.
But Linda said she had eventually started to worry.
And so I called the police and they report because she hadn't called me and I hadn't gotten in touch with her.
She showed concern. There was body, facial features indicating concern.
With little reason to doubt the scenario Linda outlined, the interview was all but over.
I told her I was going to work pretty hard to try to find her mother. I gave her my business card.
But then, just as Detective Wolfert rose to leave, something happened that would change the entire focus of the investigation.
I started to get up and I heard a noise off to the left.
That's my boyfriend was sleeping with me.
Oh, sleeping back there?
Yeah, he's in my room.
Moments later, the bedroom door opened and the boyfriend walked out.
Your name, sir? Antoine Wright?
Questioned about Isabel's disappearance, Antoine claimed to know nothing about it.
You weren't around when she left the house or anything like that? I was at my mother's house.
But he was now living with Linda, according to what Antoine told the detective.
She called the landlord and talked to him. He said it's okay if I stay here until the mom comes back.
The correlation between Isabel disappearing and Antoine moving in wasn't all that struck the investigator as suspicious either.
We have a teenager with an individual that appeared to me to be a lot older than a teenager.
And the fact that Antoine had waited until the end of Linda's interview to come out also seemed odd.
I was wondering, why didn't he come out and sit with us and talk with us?
Had he been asleep like Linda said? Or had he been eavesdropping, hoping to learn how much the police knew? For the moment, Detective Wolfert didn't press the issue. But when he left that afternoon, the detective couldn't help but wonder whether Antoine knew something about Isabel's death, even if her daughter didn't.
I continued walking out the door with a little bit of suspicion at that point. There's something wrong here.
Did Linda's boyfriend have something to do with her mother's death? That afternoon, the investigators scoured the neighborhood for answers.
The police did come out to talk to me and to start talking to the neighbors.
It was very clear from the neighbors that Isabel was frightened for her daughter and frightened because Antoine Wright was not a good influence.
But should Isabel have been frightened for herself? The authorities were beginning to think so.
Right off the bat, I remember that Linda and Antoine became strong suspects.
For the moment, the investigators' suspicion was based on little more than a hunch. But if Linda and Antoine had killed Isabel, would the young lovers have been able to keep it a secret? The investigators were determined to find out.
So what we did is what we call a media blitz. We set it up into the sheriff's office, brought in as many television media folks in there. I released certain information purposely to try to stimulate a witness.
the media blitz paid off. On July 6th, barely 48 hours after Isabel's body had been found, sheriff's investigators received a phone call concerning the case.
We received some information from a friend of Linda and Antoine's who said, "Hey, I don't want any part of this, but I want to tell you what happened."
The friend didn't know anything about Isabel's death, but he did have some important information concerning Isabel's car.
He says, it's at the airport.
That much fit with what Linda had already told the authorities about her mother's trip to Texas. But according to the caller, Isabel wasn't the one who had driven her car to the airport. He was. The caller told police that around June 24th, Antoine and Linda had asked him to move a car because neither of them could drive a stick shift.
And he said, sure. And when he pulled in front of the house, they came out and they started putting things in the car. And he thought it was kind of unusual.
The car loaded. The friend said that Antoine and Linda had followed him to the airport.
They had him drive the car to the Palm Beach International Airport and park the car there, and then they gave him a ride away.
If what the caller said was true, Linda's story about her mother loading the car and driving off wasn't. Coming up, police search for Isabel's car.
They tried to make it look like she had actually went on a trip.
And the authorities find a crime scene.
You couldn't see it to the naked eye. I mean, it's just what.
By the afternoon of July 6, 2000, it had been less than 48 hours since a surveyor had chanced upon a badly decomposed body in the overgrowth along a Florida roadside. But thanks to distinctive jewelry found on the body, Palm Beach County Sheriff's investigators had already tentatively identified the remains as those of 50-year-old Isabel Pedroza.
That's what led us to the house in Palm Beach Gardens, to Linda Pedroza's house.
At the house, the investigators found 17-year-old Linda living with her 23-year-old boyfriend, Antoine Wright.
Antoine Wright had
Within an hour, the deputies tracked down Isabel's Kia in the long-term parking lot.
They found from the ticket of when it was driven in that it had been there for several days when they found it.
And just as the caller described, it was loaded with Isabel's luggage.
They tried to make it look like she had actually went on a trip.
With that evidence, detectives went back to Linda and informed her that her mother's remains had been found.
They told me that they believed they found my mom based on some jewelry that was on her. I don't remember how I reacted. I think I cried. I don't remember how I reacted.
Then, the investigators brought Linda in for questioning.
Linda Pedroza was shown some photographs of her mother and the crime scene, and Linda got upset about that.
But if the police hoped the photographs would break Linda, they were disappointed. During the interview, she denied any knowledge of her mother's death.
Do you know who killed Isabella Pedroza?
No.
Linda maintained that she'd last seen her mother when she drove off, supposedly to visit relatives in Texas.
She drove off. Who else knew right at that immediate time period she was driving off besides yourself?
Mother. She wasn't.
Was there any neighbors out front or anything like that? Did you happen to see standing about, watching, anything like that?
Unfortunately, nobody was out back. Not that I know.
But a voice stress analysis of the interview tape indicated possible deception in some of Linda's answers. So after letting Linda go, the detectives went to a judge and requested a warrant to search her house.
They had enough evidence as far as the missing person, the neighbor's statements, and some inconsistencies in what Linda was telling them.
We found a lamp that had no cord to it, and we kind of suspected that particular cord was the same cord used as a ligature that we found at the scene where the remains were.
But the search resulted in few other clues. So the investigators decided it was time to lean on her boyfriend. On July 7th, they brought Antoine in for questioning.
I basically laid into him. I explained to him from A to Z what we had, and we know that you are involved in this homicide.
But Antoine refused to be intimidated.
He was not worried. He was laid back. He was really easygoing. Hey, don't worry about this. This is nothing. He had no fear in his voice as far as what was transpiring.
Question number 4, are you responsible for the disappearance of Isabella? Question number 5, is today Saturday? Question number 6, did you kill Isabella?
Once again, a voice stress analysis of the tape showed signs of deception in Antoine's answers. But investigators had little else to go on.
There was a lack of direct evidence or witnesses.
They couldn't prove it, but police suspected that Linda and Antoine had killed Isabel.
We wanted more evidence at that point. So we basically gave them the impression that we weren't looking at them. We purposely did that to make them relax, and hopefully a mistake will be made.
Over the next several days, more evidence trickled in. The autopsy confirmed that the body was indeed Isabel and that she had been murdered.
And they did some DNA testing, and that certainly was Isabella Pedroza.
We had blunt force trauma to the back of the head and then ligature strangulation.
With that confirmation, investigators decided to question Linda and her boyfriend one more time.
The decision was made, it's time to go pick them up again and really, hammer them.
Sheriff's deputies picked up Antoine first on the morning of July 15th, but his interrogation was essentially a repeat of the first.
You going to incriminate yourself in this homicide?
No, sir.
You going to tell us today that you're involved in this homicide, directly or indirectly?
No, sir.
But what about Linda? While Antoine was being interrogated, investigators once again knocked on her door.
And I go to the door, and it was the detective. And he says, I need you to take a ride with me somewhere.
I asked that detective to drive Linda to the sheriff's office slowly and just talk to her, develop a rapport with her.
On the way, the detective also took a detour.
He took me to where they found my mom, and he parked there for a while. And I remember just looking straight ahead, and he just started going into detail about the condition of my mom's body, and I remember not wanting to hear that.
But was it enough to break her? Once in the interrogation room, Linda also stuck to her story. And after about an hour of fruitless questioning, the investigators called a timeout.
The detectives, we met in the center of the detective bureau, and we sat down and we were brainstorming. They're not telling us anything. We're not getting anywhere.
But the detectives weren't the only ones getting frustrated.
They left me in an interrogation room alone, and I felt like I was gonna go crazy.
After half an hour alone, Linda did something that would break the whole case wide open.
I went and I stepped out the room, and I was like, I need to talk.
Actually, she wanted to do more than talk. After about 20 minutes alone with Linda, the detective rushed back into the squad room.
He comes running out and he says, give me a tape recorder, she's confessing.
I was like lost. I wasn't sure like what was gonna happen, if I was saying the right things. I told him what happened.
According to Linda's taped confession, it was Antoine who had first suggested killing Isabel.
He said, this isn't gonna work out. And I was like, what do you mean it's not gonna work out? And he's like, you and I can't be together. We can't be together unless your mom's out.
Linda said she had refused at first.
And I was like, okay, I'll be 18 pretty soon. I said, and we'll run away together. I said, we'll run away. He's like, no, we're not running away together. He's like, that's not gonna work, because she'll send the police after me, and this and that. And I was like, it never crossed my mind to hurt my mom until he mentioned it.
But eventually, Linda says she gave in.
I was in love with him. I was crazy about him. I was almost willing to just do anything he said, because he made me believe that he was the only person that could make me happy.
According to Linda, the murder occurred on the evening of June 23rd.
We were waiting for my mom to come home from work, and he asked me, are you sure you want to do it? He's like, do you really love me? And I said, yeah.
The plan was that right before she would get home, they turned the music up real loud.
He put on a CD, and it was like really, and this happened as soon as she walked in, and she turned around and looked at me, and she's like, is somebody in here? And I was like, and I remember telling her, no, there's nobody in here.
Instead, Isabel had walked into an ambush.
Antoine's in the bedroom behind a door with a frying pan.
He hit her with a pan really hard, and she screamed, and she tried to run.
She tried to run, and tried to run to the door, and I blocked her.
Then, according to Linda, Antoine had slipped up behind her mother with an electrical cord.
He wraps it around her neck, he pulls it and starts strangling her. Some point, while she's struggling, he is pulling this cord so hard that the cord breaks. She brings him another cord.
He grabbed it and he put it around her neck. And I just turned around and I didn't watch.
At least not at first. But according to Linda, her mother had continued to struggle.
He was having problems with her, so I helped him pull the cord tighter.
And then 2 minutes later, she was dead. He put her in the bathtub.
He filled it with water and shoved her head under the water just in case she was still alive.
Linda told police that she barely realized what she had done.
At the time, I was constantly, I was high. I was just drinking, smoking, I was popping pills. Antoine was getting X. I was just not really feeling anything at the moment.
But with Isabel dead, Linda and Antoine had a new problem: disposing of her body. Coming up, the lovers take drastic measures.
I've never heard of that type of scenario. In the movies, yes, but in the reality, no.
But Antoine tells a different story.
He said it was all
15th, 2000. 17-year-old Linda Pedroza was sitting in the Palm Beach County Sheriff's interrogation room. 11 days earlier, the body of her mother, 50-year-old Isabel Pedroza, had been discovered dumped in a swamp. Linda had just confessed to killing her mother with the help of her 23-year-old boyfriend, Antoine Wright.
I don't think I would have been able to live with myself much longer if I didn't tell anybody.
Linda told detectives that after strangling Isabel, she and Antoine left her mother's body in the bathtub and drove to Home Depot.
We got these big bottles of muriatic acid because we thought that muriatic acid would dissolve my mom's body.
I was basically blown out of my shoes. I never heard of that type of scenario. In the movies, yes, but in the reality, no.
And as Linda and Antoine soon discovered, there was a good reason why.
It didn't work. Whatever it was, it didn't work. And he said we had to get a tarp.
Now they've got a waterlogged, somewhat acid-eaten body that they need to dispose of.
Hidden in the house, embarked on their new life together.
They went and got tattoos. They bought a camera, and they took pictures of themselves.
We thought we got away with it.
But they had made one big miscalculation. According to Linda, it was Antoine who had decided to dump the body in the acreage.
Unbeknownst to him that there was going to be a surveyor there in the next couple of weeks, he believed that there was nothing going on in the woods, that no one would find that body ever.
Even then, it had been sheer luck that Isabel's body was found.
Where he dumped her just past some tall grass and some brush. He didn't go any further because there was a fence. If he would have probably stepped over the fence and took her another 50 yards, we may not have found her for years.
But Antoine hadn't crossed the fence, triggering the chain of events that eventually led to Linda's confession.
Fortunate for us, most criminals are lazy.
Now all the investigators needed was to substantiate Linda's story. Would the fact that she'd confessed be enough to break Antoine?
We got a confession from her. We went back down and talked to Antoine. She's lying, didn't do it.
Armed with Linda's confession, detectives went back to search her home again. This time, the detectives uncovered hidden clues that had been invisible during the first search.
Where I was sitting, interviewing Linda the first time, behind me, on the floor, there was some blood splattering.
The floors and walls had been wiped clean, but no amount of scrubbing could hide the chemical traces the blood had left behind.
You couldn't see it to the naked eye. I mean, it just wasn't there. But when we went in and started doing the scientific work, which the crime scene investigators they did, from the black light, luminol, we started finding blood splattering.
We processed the house. We actually did luminol, discovered areas in the hallway where the murder had occurred, and it's pretty much what she was saying was substantiate what we were finding at the scene.
Ripping up the baseboards, the crime scene investigators also found actual blood that the cleanup had apparently missed.
They found blood that had dripped down into the baseboard.
The search team also found several rolls of undeveloped film, snapshots taken by Linda and Antoine after Isabel's death.
We took the film and had it developed, and they had pictures of themselves at these different locations and these parties and things they were doing.
Photographs of Linda and Mr. Wright at a shopping mall in Palm Beach Gardens, bags in hand, happy looks on their faces, very affectionate with one another.
Police now had more than enough to corroborate Linda's confession and to charge Linda and Antoine for the murder of Isabel Pedroza.
We charged both of them. She was transported to the juvenile detention since she was 17, and Antoine went to the county jail.
By that evening, word of the arrest had spread across Palm Beach County, even reaching Linda's father serving time on a domestic assault charge.
We were looking at the news, and then all of a sudden I saw my Linda, and that were taking her to jail. I was in a state of disbelief.
Despite the fact that Linda was only 17, the prosecutors announced that they intended to try her as an adult.
The age is not the issue in this case, I don't believe. I mean, you're very similar in maturity here, and they should be both responsible.
And since Linda was being tried as an adult, the punishment could be severe.
They were facing the ultimate penalty, the death penalty, both of them.
Although according to the prosecutor, in Linda's case, it was a tactical move to pressure her into a deal.
I needed Linda's testimony to implicate Antoine Wright.
But when the prosecutors approached Linda and her attorney, offering a plea deal in exchange for her testimony, she refused.
To our surprise, Linda did not want to cooperate any further. Linda did not want to tell us any more details about that, did not want to flip on Antoine Wright.
I remember I kept saying I needed to talk to him because, he was like the guide, him not being around, I was like lost.
However, Antoine was less loyal to his lover.
We agreed to let him plead to a lesser, which would be second-degree murder. We also agreed to give him 20 years in the Department of Corrections.
In his plea, Antoine essentially confirmed the details Linda had already provided to the authorities.
Pretty much everything we surmised and what Linda had told us, for the most part, was true.
There was one glaring difference, however.
According to Antoine Wright in his statement, Linda is the person who came to him and said, we could be together, we could spend the money, we could have a life, but we need to get rid of my mother.
He said it was all me. He said it was all my plan. It was all my idea.
Coming up, Antoine's betrayal leaves Linda with two choices. Should she take a plea?
At the time, 17-year-olds still faced the death penalty.
Or take her chances?
Perhaps the jury would be.
On December 20th, 2002, Linda Pedroza walked into a Palm Beach County, Florida courtroom. The 19-year-old was accused of murdering her mother, Isabel, 2 years earlier. Linda's boyfriend, 26-year-old Antoine Wright, had already pled guilty to his role in the crime.
I was concerned that perhaps the jury would be sympathetic towards Linda, that they might believe that it was all up to her boyfriend, that he did it, and that she was a passive participant.
At the time, 17-year-olds still faced the death penalty. And no, I was fearful of that, so I wasn't sure if going to trial would be the best thing. I wasn't sure of how any of that would have worked.
So I believe they both deserved the same sentence.
According to Linda, the sentences should have been reversed. Cynthia George grew up poor,
And she was blue collar, working class.
but she married well.
The George family is one of the wealthiest families in the state.
Hers is kind of a Cinderella type story.
There was no glass slipper, but there was a crown.
And she enters the Mrs. Ohio beauty pageants.
Cindy, by most appearances, seemed to be the perfect wife and mother.
But then came a shocking crime.
Somebody has been shot at our gas station. We need somebody immediately.
The shooter walks up to the driver's window. One shot.
It seemed like a hit.
And the resulting investigation would reveal the real truth behind Cindy's beautiful facade. A tawdry world of infidelity, illegitimacy, and perhaps one. It was just after noon on a sunny Saturday when Jeff Zack pulled up to the gas pumps of a busy wholesale club.
He had some vending machines in Akron that he supplied as a small business. He was going on his normal routine.
Normally, Zack would gas up, duck into the store for the chips and cookies to stock his vending machines, and proceed to make his rounds. But this Saturday would be different.
Next thing you know, a ninja-style motorcycle pulled up next to him.
The rider got off the bike and approached Zack's SUV with a gun.
The shooter walks up to the driver's window. One shot popped in the left cheek.
Then, as Jeff Zack slumped into the driver's seat of his Ford Explorer, the rider vanished as quickly as he had appeared.
This guy was calm, cool, got on a motorcycle and took off.
Calm and cool didn't describe the scene the shooter had left behind, however.
This had happened in a public place in broad daylight.
There was people pumping gas at the time. And nobody had actually seen the shot, but people heard the noise and turned.
Employees immediately called for help.
Akron 911, what's your emergency? Hi, I'm at BJ's Wholesale Club. Right. Somebody has been shot at our gas station. We need somebody immediately.
BJ's Wholesale had put out over their PA system is there a doctor in the house? Coincidentally enough, there was a female emergency room doctor who responded almost immediately.
It was no use. Jeff Zack was all but dead by the time the police and ambulances arrived.
The emergency room doctor actually got in the ambulance and went to the hospital with him, but there was nothing she could do, and he was pronounced dead shortly afterwards.
Meanwhile, the police at the scene struggled to make sense out of what had just happened.
For somebody to be shot on a Saturday in a busy shopping area, one of the busiest shopping areas in this, not only Akron, but in the whole area, there was something significantly different about that. Something that we don't usually deal with all the time in the homicides that we do experience.
And for the moment, they had little to work with. Despite numerous witnesses, they didn't even have a description of the shooter.
The perpetrator could not be identified by any witnesses at the scene. He had a helmet completely covering his face.
They couldn't even give us a description of whether he's Caucasian, Asian. We didn't have anything.
Finding the truth would take more than 4 years. Lead detectives to one of Akron's most recognizable restaurants and expose the scandalous secrets of one of the city's most prominent couples. It seemed everyone in Akron knew Cindy and Ed George. Married for 17 years, it was Ed's family name and his restaurant that made them easily recognizable.
The George family is one of the wealthiest families in the state.
The family owed their wealth to the Tangier, the massive Moroccan-themed restaurant, banquet hall, and cabaret Ed's father had opened in 1949.
Tangier's restaurant is a landmark restaurant. It was a nightclub that over the years attracted major acts coming into Akron.
Tangier was like the Copacabana. All these singers would come there and stop on their tours, the Dean Martins, Frank Sinatra's.
And if the Tangier was an Akron institution, the owner's beautiful blonde wife was a local celebrity.
Cindy George led a glamorous life there as the life of the party, the hostess.
But unlike Ed, Cindy came from more humble beginnings.
Hers is kind of a Cinderella type story. She rose up from a lower middle class life to wealth and popularity.
She comes from a religious family, blue collar, working class.
Born in 1954, Cindy Rohr grew up south of Akron in the small factory town of North Canton. Her father worked as a coal miner, and the family sometimes struggled to make ends meet.
She was always the good-looking kid out of the bunch, whatever group of kids she ran with. She was always the blonde kid who had lots of boys around her and was the girly girl.
Unable to afford college, the former high school cheerleader worked a series of jobs. Then, in 1978, Cindy auditioned as a dancer at the Tangier.
She didn't land a job at Tangier. She landed a husband who owned Tangier.
Ed George hadn't been looking to marry when he met the 24-year-old aspiring dancer. A self-proclaimed workaholic, at 40 he appeared to be a confirmed bachelor.
So it's almost like he's never going to get married.
But that changed the moment he met Cindy.
She's very vivacious and very attractive, and she just knocks him out.
Ed was smitten, and she was.
Ed, a devout Catholic, was also attracted to Cindy's gentle nature.
She's a woman of prayer. She's very kind-hearted. You couldn't kill a bug in her house. It's like you couldn't step on a spider.
So despite a 16-year age difference, the two began a romance. 6 years later, Cindy and Ed were married in a lavish ceremony, complete with a horse-drawn carriage.
They had a fairy tale type of wedding and were supposed to live happily ever after.
Trophy wife isn't necessarily fair, but she was the young, beautiful bride of a prominent businessman.
Over the next 5 years, the couple had 4 children.
She had these really arduous pregnancies. Cindy is almost ephemeral. She's so slight. And each of the pregnancies, she's like bedridden.
But even with 4 children, Cindy and Ed wanted a bigger family and decided to adopt 2 more.
So you've got this woman who, within a few years of marriage, she's got like 6 kids.
To make room for their growing family, the couple built a huge 8,000 square foot mansion on a sprawling parcel of land outside of town.
At this point in her life, her husband is this wealthy restaurateur in Akron. They're living in a multi-million-dollar house. In fact, the common thing being said about Cindy was the garage in her house now is bigger than the house she grew up in.
And with a nanny at home to help with the children, Cindy spent much of her time helping her husband at the Tangier.
In the old films where there would always be the beautiful woman hanging around at the bar. That was Cindy George.
But was her role as hostess the only reason she spent so much time at the restaurant? Or was Cindy, now a 37-year-old housewife and mother of 6, looking for something more?
Obviously, there was something missing in her life. There was some talk that, Cindy George had become a little bit restless, a little bit bored.
And the sight of the bored, beautiful blonde sitting alone at the bar was more than some men could resist. Men like Jeff Zack. It was 1991 when Jeff Zack walked up to the Tangier bar to order drinks and first said hello to Cindy.
He struck up a conversation with her, came back, introduced her to his wife.
And later, when Cindy introduced Jeff to her husband, Ed also took a liking to the quick-witted businessman.
He's fun to be with and he's charming. He tells a lot of stories.
Based on his stories, Jeff Zack had already packed a lot of experience into his 34 years. He told the Georges he had spent time as a stockbroker, a scrap metal dealer, and had even served a stint as a paratrooper in the Israeli army.
He had a colorful life. He had bounced around from job to job.
Currently, Zack was trying to get into the vending machine business. At least, that's what he said.
He was involved in all sorts of schemes and some things that were maybe legitimate, maybe not legitimate.
Zack was soon doing odd jobs for the Georges, too.
Zack starts out as this really friendly, helpful kind of guy. Ed's working, and Cindy's got, all these kids. So Zack is, well, I can help. I'm kind of a handyman. I'll be there.
Zack not only pitched in around the restaurant, he was also more than willing to help Cindy at home.
Ed is, he's working. He's running the restaurant, so he's really not around.
She liked the attention of men, and sometimes that wasn't coming from her husband, who was busy with the restaurant.
In fact, Ed was so busy running the Tangier that he barely seemed to notice how much time Cindy was spending with Jeff Zack.
If Ed George suspected that there was something more going on between his wife and Jeff Zack, it's hard to say.
And if the restaurant wasn't enough to keep her husband busy, soon Cindy was unexpectedly pregnant again.
Cindy George and Ed George are devout Catholics, and they believe that any child that they had was a gift from God.
In 1994, at the age of 40, she gave birth to her 5th child, the George's 7th. And by the end of the decade, with the restaurant thriving, the family appeared as happy as ever.
Yeah, they apparently had it all going on. The kids were popular. They went to the best schools. Cindy, by most appearances, seemed to be the perfect wife and mother.
And in 2000, Cindy found time to pursue a childhood dream.
She enters the Mrs. Ohio beauty pageants.
During high school, she began to become fascinated with her own beauty, if you will. She wanted to be involved with the beauty pageants because she was beautiful. She really was.
Cindy finished the competition in 4th place. But even as she stood on stage smiling, Cindy George's perfect world was about to come unraveled. The first indication of trouble came in January of 2001, when Ed George called an acquaintance at the Akron Police Department.
He said that he and his wife were receiving harassing calls from a man that he was bothering them.
Ed was reluctant to name names and wouldn't discuss why the man was supposedly harassing Cindy. All he would say was that he wanted it stopped.
He was asking Deputy Chief Callahan what to do about it.
The answer was not much, unless, that is, Ed wanted to file a formal complaint.
When the Akron police captain advised him how reports should be made on it and what could be done, Mr. George advised that he would work on it himself and he would call back if he needed anything else.
Ed George never pressed charges, but soon the harassing phone calls to his wife would stop permanently. Coming up, a mysterious assassin guns down Jeff Zack,
It seemed like a hit.
and the investigation threatens to uncover Cindy's secret.
One child had a different complexion than the other children.
Akron, Ohio, June 16, 2001. It was a hectic Saturday afternoon at BJ's Wholesale Club, but not for the usual reasons. Instead of SUVs and minivans, police cars and ambulances were responding to an assassin had walked up to an SUV parked at the store's gas pumps and shot the driver execution style.
Man got off that bike, walked over, put a gun to the window, and killed him. Shot him in the head.
A few customers and employees had witnessed the shooting.
One clerk who works at the booth, she actually saw the suspect get off the motorcycle and walk over to the car. She turned around, and when she heard the noise, she turned back around and saw him put the gun into the back of his pants and calmly get on the motorcycle and take off.
At the scene, police identified the victim as a local businessman named Jeff Zack. But despite the witnesses, the assassin's identity remained a mystery.
No one saw the face of the shooter. He was wearing a helmet with a black shield. The fact is, no one knows if it was a man or a woman.
All the witnesses and 911 callers could give police was a description of the shooter's motorcycle.
What color was the motorcycle? Green and black, huh? Green and black. That new limey color green.
It was the sport type motorcycle. The term, I guess, is crotch rocket.
By the 6 o'clock news that evening, all of Akron was on the lookout for the killer's distinctive bike.
We received hundreds and hundreds of tips about bike sightings all over the place, all over Akron, but we really weren't any closer to narrowing it down to our shooter.
Nor were they getting any closer to the bigger question: why gun a man down at a gas pump?
Did he just get in a road rage incident with a motorist and got in an argument?
Based on the witness descriptions of the shooting, that didn't sound too likely to the police.
There wasn't any argument. It was just the guy got off the bike, walked up to him, and shot him.
There was no shouting, no yelling, no screaming. It was just a calm, cool, collected one shot to the head through the window and take off.
To the police, the killer's almost businesslike demeanor suggested that Zack's murder was anything but a random crime.
It's meticulously planned. I mean, somebody's following Zack. Somebody's paying attention to his schedule.
It seemed like a hit.
Could it have been a contract killing? Hoping for clues, the police turned to Jeff Zack's closest associates.
We tried to talk to his family, friends, see, does he have any enemies? Why would somebody want him dead?
The answer, according to Zack's friends and family, was any number of people for any number of reasons.
It wasn't a matter of who killed Jeff Zack. It was who didn't kill Jeff Zack.
He's shady, and he made a lot of enemies. And some of those people, you know, could hire somebody.
Had Jeff Zack crossed the wrong person? Based on what his friends and family told the investigators, it was entirely possible.
He had a violent temper, and he was in-your-face kind of guy. Even the family will tell you that.
And when detectives talked to Zack's wife, Bonnie, that evening, they learned that there was at least one business associate of Jeff Zack who had a very good reason to be angry with him. It was the man Zack had once run errands for, the well-known Akron restaurateur, Ed George.
She told them that Jeff had been having a long-term affair with a Cynthia George.
It wasn't just a fling. It was a 10-year affair.
Jeff had one time mentioned that he had a daughter by Cindy. He discounted that later and said it wasn't true.
True or not, Bonnie's information immediately changed the entire thrust of the investigation.
When detectives learned that Cindy George was having an affair with Jeff Zack, they immediately, of course, suspected Ed George.
The wealthy restaurant owner seemed to have a motive.
It seemed like the classic case. My wife is having an affair with this good-looking younger man, and I'm the wealthy, older restaurateur, and I'm going to get him out of the picture.
And then there were those strange phone calls Ed had reported to the police a few months before the murder.
Ed George had called back in January of 2001 complaining to him that somebody was harassing his wife, and they were getting tired of it.
The morning after Jeff Zack's murder, investigators went to the Georges' mansion looking for answers.
They met with Cindy George. Ed wasn't home at the time, so they couldn't talk to him.
Detectives didn't have much luck with Cindy either when they asked her how well she knew the victim.
She admitted at the time that she knew Jeff Zack, but she wouldn't say any more than that, and she wouldn't talk to us.
Did Cindy's reluctance mean she shared the investigators' suspicions about her husband?
Why would you not want to talk to the police? Why would you not want to be forthcoming with information, especially if this was a friend, according to Cindy George's own words?
The next day, investigators finally spoke with Ed George over the phone.
Ed George did confirm that it was Jeff Zack that was harassing his wife, Cindy George.
Although, according to Ed, he and Cindy had only learned of Jeff Zack's murder when they saw an article in the Sunday paper.
You know, Ed buys the paper and it's on the front page. Well, he shows Cindy the paper, you know, and so that's how they find out.
That's what Ed told the police, at least. And he promised he and Cindy would tell them more.
When we did try to pursue bringing them in for a statement, we were under the impression that they were on their way in.
Someone came to the police station, but it wasn't Ed or Cindy.
They didn't show up, but their attorneys did.
The attorneys informed police that the Georges would not be cooperating with the investigation.
Ed George will not talk to them. Cindy George will not talk to them. If they don't want to talk to you, that means they have something that they're hiding from you.
Convinced that the Georges were somehow connected to the murder, the police dug deeper into the couple. And looking through a series of family photos, the investigators saw possible confirmation of something that they heard from the victim's wife, Bonnie.
And we noticed that one child had a different complexion than the other children.
And it wasn't either of the Georges' adopted children. It was the baby Cindy and Ed had after Jeff Zack entered their lives. Could he be the child's father?
There were similarities more towards what he looked like, and that was something that we wanted to explore.
If Jeff was the child's father, that meant Ed George might have more than just the affair to be angry about. But when police asked for a paternity test to prove or disprove the allegation, the Georges wouldn't commit.
They kept holding off, and after a couple months of being given the runaround, we decided to get a search warrant and do a paternity test.
And the results of the paternity test confirmed what the police had long suspected.
Jeff Zack was the father of that baby. Eventually DNA confirming that was a shocker.
As far as the cops were concerned, Cindy's having a child with Jeff was also a strong motive for murder.
As long as Jeff Zach was around, that skeleton in the closet would never go away.
He could go after custody of that child. And the only way for Cindy George to break free and clear of Jeff Zach is for him to be gone.
The police would need more than a motive to make an arrest, however. And with Ed George refusing to answer questions, they needed hard evidence connecting him to the shooter, a shooter whose identity remained a mystery.
And after the paternity test, we really didn't have any place else to go, and basically the case was put on hold.
Coming up, a phone tip leads police to an assassin.
He said, I'm dating a girl, and she says her ex-husband is the one who knocked off Jeff Zach.
But would the killer's trail lead back to Ed George?
He had a girlfriend. Her name was Cindy.
On June 17, 2002, it had been a year and a day since Jeff Zach's shocking murder at the hands of a motorcycle-riding gunman. The lack of an arrest in the high-profile case prompted the Akron Beacon-Journal to run the headline, "Whodunit Perplexes Detectives."
The police investigated that for a full year, and at the end of the year, they had nothing.
Unbeknownst to the public, the police investigation was gathering steam. Detectives were all but convinced that Zach's murder was connected to his 10-year affair with Cindy George, the beautiful wife of the wealthy and well-connected, talking to the police. And most of the people they knew weren't talking either.
We kept getting, well, Ed George told me not to say anything. The attorneys told me, Ed George's attorney told me not to say anything.
So Cindy and Ed went on with their daily lives. But in late May, 11 months after the murder, police had finally gotten a break. A man called in claiming he had information on the mysterious shooter.
He said, yeah, it's true, I'm dating a girl, and she says her ex-husband is the one who knocked off Jeff Zach.
The woman's name was Christine Todaro, and on the morning of June 12, 2002, Akron police detectives came knocking at her door.
They're all showing their badges, and I just shut the door again. They're like, no, we're not here for you. We want to talk to you about your ex-husband.
At the mention of her ex, Christine opened the door.
I let him in, and I finally just looked at him and I said, God, what took you so long?
According to Christine, the man they were looking for was her ex-husband, John Zaffino.
He's a big guy. He's a truck driver, beer and shot kind of guy.
Christine told the cops that her ex-husband had known Jeff Zach because they had argued, apparently, over a woman.
Chris Todaro, in her statement to us, said that, John was having problems with him.
She also claimed that after hearing that Zach had been gunned down, she'd called her ex and asked if he had anything to do with the shooting.
And all I said to him was that you? And he laughed and snickered, and he said, well, let's just say the guy's going to have a hard time parting his hair from now on.
That wasn't all Christine Todaro told police about her ex-husband either.
I told them that he had a girlfriend, and I said her name was Cindy.
That really kind of made the hair stand up on the back of my neck.
Over the next several days, investigators confirmed that the Cindy John Zaffino was seeing was in fact Cindy George.
Co-workers said that he bragged about his rich girlfriend that owned a restaurant.
Based on what Zaffino had told his co-workers, he'd met Cindy less than a year before Zach's murder, as she was leaving an Akron bar.
Zaffino stops her, and he says, you got to be careful. You can't walk out there alone. This is kind of a dangerous place.
Checking Zaffino and Cindy's phone records also revealed a close relationship between the two.
They spend hours and hours each day together on the cell phone.
As for how the devoted mother of 7 had time for this secret life, the George's longtime nanny revealed that Cindy was rarely home when her husband was working. George, but they still needed to answer one obvious question.
What is she doing hanging out with John Zaffino?
John Zaffino is sort of the anti-Ed George. He's the anti-Jeff Zach in a lot of respects because he's a, rugged guy, not too bright, not too good looking, just didn't seem to be Cindy George's type.
There was another possibility, however. Maybe Cindy had been looking for more than a lover when she hooked up with Zaffino outside that Akron bar. Maybe she had been looking for a hitman.
There was no connection to Jeff Zach other than Cynthia George.
And if Cindy was the link between Zach and the shooter, where did that leave the investigators' theory about a jealous husband ordering the hit?
Maybe Ed George wasn't involved in the homicide.
It was looking more and more like John Zaffino was involved, however. Checking the DMV records, the investigators learned Zaffino had purchased a motorcycle less than a month before Jeff Zach's murder.
And sure enough, it was a lime green black and white motorcycle.
The helpful sales clerk even found the police a picture of an identical bike for sale on the internet.
The people selling the motorcycle is John Zaffino's first ex-wife.
Akron police immediately dispatched a team of detectives to the address on the internet listing.
We didn't know what John's relationship was with his ex-wife, if she would alert John to it.
But as it turned out, Zaffino's first ex-wife was happy to hand over the motorcycle, a motorcycle she had received under suspicious circumstances, according to what she told the detectives.
During the middle of the night, John Zaffino had showed up at her house. He said he needed to get rid of the motorcycle. He wanted to trade it in for a car because her husband was a car salesman.
The motorcycle gave Akron police strong evidence tying Zaffino to the murder.
Very, very powerful circumstantial evidence. One of the big pieces of the puzzle we were trying to put together.
Akron police arrested John Zaffino on September 25th, 15 months after Jeff Zach's death. Once Zaffino was charged with aggravated murder, the DA expected him to roll over on Cindy George, but he refused.
Zaffino was insisting that he was innocent, and he had nothing to offer the prosecution in terms of his testimony against Cindy.
He told us that he didn't know Cindy George hardly at all.
Without Zaffino's cooperation, prosecutors didn't have enough to indict Cindy for the 2001 murder of her lover, Jeff Zach. But her name certainly came up when Zaffino stood trial in February of 2003.
When we tried John Zaffino, the theme of the case was Cindy George had a problem. Jeff Zach was a problem. John Zaffino was the solution.
Prosecutors even subpoenaed Cindy to testify.
We knew there was a connection. We knew there was a relationship. So we were going to put her on the stand.
But once sworn in, Cindy refused to testify for fear of incriminating herself.
She had that option of exerting her Fifth Amendment privilege.
For the jury, Cindy's silence on the stand was just as incriminating as anything she might have said. And they made their feelings about her clear on March 11th, when they found John Zaffino guilty of murder.
They were like, yeah, John's guilty, but where's Cindy? The jury wanted Cindy George, and they were upset with the prosecution for not charging her.
Why didn't you charge Cindy? When's she going to be charged? And we were constantly asked that question.
The police had not given up on Cindy George. The question was, what next?
They had to really take a look at Cindy George's life and see how she was possibly connected to this murder, because John Zaffino refused to sell his lover down the river.
Even after he was sentenced to 23 years to life in prison, Cindy continued to write him letters.
And in that letter, she says to John Zaffino, I pray for your strength every night, and every night before I go to bed, I light a candle outside my bedroom door for you.
But Zaffino unknowingly helped investigators build their case against Cindy.
When John Zaffino was in prison, he made a number of phone calls. Those phone calls are always taped by the prison.
We had hoped there'd be calls from Cindy, but those never happened. He basically kept his calls were all to his family members.
As would be expected, many of the calls concerned Zaffino's plan for an appeal.
See, once the appeal gets accepted, I can get bond. Now, they better bond me the out of here. I don't care if it is $10 million. They better bond me out.
Absolutely.
They just put 2.5 in their restaurant, Jude.
If there was any doubt about who Zaffino thought should bond him out, he made it clear when he demanded new lawyers.
Big lawyers, big ones, firms, and they're going to pay for it. Just tell them they're going to pay for it. Call them, get the price, and tell the Georges, write a check. All right?
And Zaffino hinted that there would be consequences for Cindy George and her husband if she didn't help him. Since the police investigation had cleared Ed George, Zaffino's calls damaged just one person, Cindy.
Those calls were damning to Cindy, and basically helped lead us to the arrest.
On January 10, 2005, after a 3.5-year investigation, police arrested Cindy George for Jeff Zach's murder.
She was shopping with her daughters when the arrest came down, and it was sudden, and I think that made it shocking.
But just as she had throughout the entire investigation, Cindy refused to talk to police.
We opened up by saying, this is your chance to give your side of the story. No one's heard it. Tell us what happened. And her response was, I was told not to talk to you. I want my attorney. And that's it. That's the end of the interview.
Coming up, Cindy's defense surprises the prosecutors.
They decided to waive the jury and try the case to the judge.
But will the judge's decision be an even bigger surprise?
Oh my goodness, she's going to get up.
On November 14, 2005, Cindy George walked into a Summit County, Ohio courtroom to stand trial for the murder of her ex-lover, Jeff Zach. She faced 2 charges: conspiracy to commit murder and complicity to commit aggravated murder. If found guilty, the former beauty queen and mother of 7, including 1 child fathered by the victim, could go to prison for the rest of her life.
You look at a woman that one point in her life had a storybook really existence, and yet you end up in really this kind of this tawdry scandal. Love, sex, murder, money, power, adultery. I mean, there was absolutely everything here.
But despite the fact that she had cheated at least twice and had a child with another man, when Cindy sat down at the defense table, her husband, Ed, was right behind her.
God bless that George for sticking with his wife. That's certainly got to be a difficult challenge for any husband.
Mr. George didn't want to experience sitting on her side of the table.
But would all that legal experience be enough to overcome the disadvantage of Cindy's scandalous past?
You get any women on that jury, the women are not going to like Cindy George just for the fact that of her infidelity.
And that might explain why Cindy's attorneys announced a last-minute surprise for prosecutors.
The morning of trial, her lawyers stood up and indicated that they had decided to waive the jury and try the case to the judge.
It appeared to be a smart move.
You got to remember, there's been a ton of pretrial publicity on this case. A lot of people are assuming that Cindy George is guilty.
According to the prosecution's opening statement, the evidence against Cindy was overwhelming. For starters, Cindy's lover, John Zaffino, had already been convicted of killing Jeff Zach.
There's no other reason for John Zaffino to be involved in this case other than Cindy George.
She's the one who had the issue with Jeff Zach. She had the means to pay for this killing, and she had the love of John Zaffino to help carry it out.
Cindy was charged with complicity, prosecutors explained, because she had put Zaffino up to the hit, planned it, and even financed it. As proof, they presented the sales receipt for the getaway bike, along with records from Cindy's bank account.
The times of the purchase, the amounts of the purchase, those coincided with Cynthia George withdrawing money from her bank in almost those exact amounts.
Cindy and Zaffino's cell phone records, according to the prosecution, followed a suspiciously similar pattern.
Zach gets popped a little after noon, and there's a phone call Zaffino makes to Cindy George at like 11:50, and then there is another phone call that he makes at, let's say, 12:30.
According to the prosecutors, the phone calls Zaffino made after his conviction suggested that Cindy was bankrolling his appeal too, buying Zaffino's silence in hopes of shielding herself from prosecution.
Call my friends and you tell them that they will pay for it, and just to get the checkbook out and not worry about it, because this is the way it's going to be, or they're going to lose their freedom.
Cindy's attorneys, however, argued that while Zaffino's tape statements sounded incriminating, they didn't prove that Cindy was the one pulling the strings.
They asked the judge believe that John Zaffino acted alone.
There's no evidence pointing to Cindy George as saying to John Zaffino, I want you to kill him for me.
The murder, her defense claimed, was a gift to Cindy, something the love-struck Zaffino had done on his own to help her escape Jeff Zach.
She was almost a prisoner of this affair. That, she had had a relationship with him, and it started out, and then it became so possessive, and was basically so manipulative that she couldn't get out of it.
And while Cindy and Zaffino certainly talked on the phone a lot, the defense argued that there was no way prosecutors could prove the calls had anything to do with planning a murder.
Phone records don't speak. Who knows what was being said on the phone at those times? We just know that they were talking.
And the motorcycle Cindy bought for Zaffino just before he shot Jeff Zack wasn't proof either, according to the defense.
Did she buy the motorcycle because she wanted John Zaffino to ride up and kill a man execution style on a ninja bike, or was she just lavish in her presence for this man?
They were questions that no one in the...
What happened?
But the woman who had stayed silent for almost 4.5 years would do so once again. On November 23rd, the defense rested without putting Cindy on the stand, confident they'd introduced enough reasonable doubt to secure an acquittal.
Well, there's certainly a lot of things to connect her, but yet there was certainly plausibility that she is kind of unwittingly drawn into a bad situation.
After closing arguments, the judge took 4 days to consider her verdict.
She did not make a snap decision. She thought about it for days. She reviewed over every piece of evidence.
On November 28, 2005, Cindy George was back in court, surrounded by her family, anxiously awaiting the judge's verdict.
And she starts reading the first count, which was conspiracy to commit aggravated murder.
Court finds the defendant not guilty.
And Cynthia George breathed a huge sigh of relief.
We saw basically Cindy George listening to that, and the smile growing on her face.
Out in the courtroom, Cindy's family and friends started to cheer.
It was like one of those moments where you go, oh my goodness, I mean, she got off. She's going to get off.
But the cheers ended just as suddenly as they had begun.
And Judge Cosgrove cut that short by saying, I'm not finished yet.
On the second count, complicity to commit aggravated murder, the judge found Cindy George guilty.
It was a 180-degree turn as fast as you could ever imagine.
And the family was still reeling from the shock when the judge announced Cindy's sentence: life in prison.
And when those kids heard life in prison, they started wailing and shrieking.
Extremely emotional. The kids were very upset.
And it only got worse when bailiffs placed Cindy in cuffs and walked her out of the courtroom.
They're yelling, "We love you, Mom." And she's yelling, "I'm not guilty. I love you too."
Coming up, will a new development turn the case on its head?
We were stunned, completely caught off guard.
On January 3rd, 2007, Cindy George's case was once again in court. It had been more than a year since she had been convicted of complicity and sentenced to life in prison for the 2001 murder of her lover, Jeff Zack. A year Cindy and her husband, Ed, had spent working on her appeal.
I don't think money was much of an object, and I think the object was to get Cynthia out of jail.
However, when the attorneys for the 52-year-old former beauty queen walked into Ohio's 9th District Court of Appeals that morning, overturning her conviction appeared to be a long shot.
It's highly unusual that a court of appeals would find that the judge had insufficient evidence upon which to base her decision.
But on March 21st, the appeals court did just that. The judges decided 2-1 to overturn Cindy's conviction.
We were completely caught off guard. Quite frankly, we were stunned. The evidence, in our opinion, was very strong.
The appeals court disagreed, finding that the pattern of phone calls between Cindy and John Zaffino wasn't enough to prove Cindy was involved in killing Jeff Zack. And their ruling not only meant Cindy got out of jail, it also meant she would never be retried for Jeff Zack's murder.
Reversing it with a lack of
thought. Even though they believed in her innocence, ever thought that justice would prevail.
For those who didn't believe in Cindy's innocence, the outcome wasn't justice at all.
To this day, I see that as a real injustice.
One thing is certain, though. Between her multiple affairs and having another man's child, Cindy George is no longer seen as the perfect wife and mother.
Wherever she goes, there's going to be whispers. There's going to be innuendo that she got away with murder.